Good evening or good afternoon, Trevor Shamblin. I'd like to welcome you to the ISCA TV podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Steve. How are you doing?
I'm very well. It is 20 past 10 in the evening here. What time are you where you are?
It's 2:20 in the afternoon here, so a bit of a
Nice.
difference.
Okay. And it's a couple of days before Christmas. Have you broken up for the Christmas break yet?
Today is our last day of operating till after Christmas. So I have
Nice.
crews out right now, but they should be finishing up here pretty soon and on their way back. But yeah, they have tomorrow and then Christmas off. So
Excellent. That's good. That's good. So our paths crossed very recently, actually.
mhm.
Today we are December. I think I met you for the first time at the beginning of November at the PWNA convention in Florida. I think it was as recent as that. So what's that,
Yeah,
7 weeks ago, something like that. So we're still very new to each other, but I think we got on the times that we've spoken to each other. So I thought it'd be fun to get you on the podcast, get to know you a bit better. Hopefully you can share some nuggets and gems in business and in life with our viewers. So I always think it's nice in these sort of conversations to go back to the beginning because all of us have got a backstory, all of us have got a history. So to understand the man that you are today, Trevor, what key points, what pivotal moments in your life can you draw on that you think, yeah, that led me to where I am and who I am today?
that's a good question. I would say for a long time I was an employee for the
Mm-hmm.
longest time. And when I was an employee, I always did a little bit more than just doing my job. I always thought about how inefficient some things were being done, or doing a job that I just felt like there was better ways to do it to make it
Yeah,
faster or better. And I would talk to my bosses about what if we did it this way? And they generally just never had any ears or would even listen to anything that I had to say.
yeah,
And then years later, I was kind of tired of working for the people and was like, I really want to do my own thing to where I can make the decisions on how we do things and what we're
mm-hmm.
doing and lead the direction that I want to go in.
Yeah,
So I started my own business. Um, I thought about it for years and years and years. I wanted to do pressure washing. I just thought it would be a good business, and I planned to do it when I got out of high school years ago with a friend of mine.
okay,
We both got jobs. We were gonna, put all this money together and, go buy pressure washers and start a business. And after like 4 months of working a ton of overtime and just working every week, we had pretty much spent all of our money on beer and
of
hadn't
course.
saved a dime.
Yeah,
And then I got the opportunity, became a truck driver and drove trucks for 16 years. And then there was a point where I just wanted to do my own thing.
mm.
And my wife was like, well, what do you want to do if you want to do your own business? And even though I hadn't started a pressure washing business when I was young, I'd still kind of thought about it in my mind. And for 2 years before, I had kind of snuck on to some of the Facebook, pressure washing groups and just kind of sat in the background. And I had a notebook that I just sat down and I'd scroll through all the conversations that were going on for like 2 years. And
Okay,
I'd lay in bed at night from the time everybody else in my house went to sleep. I'd lay in bed and read and read and read. And then I'd write little notes in my book and drew diagrams of equipment and just tried to take in as much knowledge as I could.
mm.
And then there was one day where I just came to the point where I'm like, I'm either going to do this or I'm going to regret never actually doing it for a second time. So I got a loan, went out and bought equipment, and then started a business. And I
Okay,
had figured that for the first 6 months, I'd probably lose money. But we made money every single month from then on. And it's been successful from
yeah,
that
good.
point on. So it's been a crazy journey. I started off doing, soft washing and pressure washing. And originally I had no desire to do windows or solar. Solar at that point, I knew solar was around. I didn't really know if people were cleaning solar. I never advertise for it, but I kept getting calls from people wanting to know if we could clean their solar systems. And at that time, nobody was doing it. The equipment wasn't out there. And I was like, man, if I'm getting calls, like 2 or 3 calls a week for a service that I never even really heard of at this point. This is 9 years ago. Never even heard of, really. And I wasn't advertising for it. And I'm getting 2 or 3 calls a week. I had to be stupid at this point not to do it.
Yeah.
And at that point, I already had an RODI system and a water-fed pole for doing windows on when we were doing house washing. So I'm like, well, I already have the equipment. I might as well do it. So we started doing solar panel cleaning. And it became very prevalent from the beginning that the equipment was just, it worked, but there was so much more room for improvement to make it so much faster. Because at that point, we were just using single RO carts, and we were getting about less than 3/4 of a gallon per minute of water out, and it was just taking forever. So, but luckily now things have changed. I designed some equipment years ago that kind of changed some of that. But solar cleaning has definitely come a long way. I mean, 9 years ago, I was crawling up on roofs with a little water-fed pole, and then today I'm using a robot to drive across huge solar panel arrays that are on carports. So it just shows, how much growth has happened just in 9 years. A service that I didn't even know existed, and now we're using robots to clean. It's just crazy where this thing that used to be a niche market, a couple of years ago, people was, solar panel cleaning, that's a little niche. And it kind of is, but I think it's at that transitional period where some people still look at it as a niche, but the people that are doing it as a main thing are looking as it's not a niche. It is a completely its own industry, and it's just blowing up more and more every day.
No, and that's where I sit. It's not a niche industry anymore in my mind. It's a whole industry, standalone, different to pressure cleaning, different to window cleaning, not to be treated the same. You mentioned about the use of the water-fed pole, and the way that I illustrate it to people is, the window cleaner's got a water-fed pole, the solar panel cleaner's got a water-fed pole. Electricians have screwdrivers. A plumber may have the same set of screwdrivers. But the plumber is not automatically qualified to rewire a house. You would not want your plumber doing that. So just because we share a similar tool set doesn't automatically allow the window cleaner to shift onto cleaning solar panels, because the skill set is different. The health and safety is very different. And as you know, that's lots of people know it's a pet topic of mine, and fortunate enough to teach it through the ISCA platform. So it's a big topic which we can discuss a little bit further. You mentioned that you wanted to go into pressure cleaning straight from high school. So let's go back even from there. What did childhood look like for Trevor? What were your sort of infancy, as far back as you can remember? What were the younger years like through your teen years? Were you the sort of child you would have wanted to have yourself?
Oh, no. No. I complain about, my kids doing things or getting in trouble, and they don't do that much. But I was, thinking back the other day, and I was like, if my kids are doing just a quarter of the things that I did when I was their age, it just made my heart hurt for a second. Like my blood pressure rose up, and I was like, oh man. But no, it was I was a wild kid back then. Yeah.
So tell us a tale. Tell us a tale.
Oh, I was running around partying and doing everything that I should have been doing, and not focusing on the things that, looking back now, I wish I would have been paying more attention to, or investing in more than having a good time. But it worked out okay. Just I think I got a much later start in like the point in my life where I started doing the things that I felt like were right for me to get where I wanted to go. And I spent a lot of time trying to find how to start, or how to get serious about things. Yeah. And I wish I would have started sooner. But
Do you feel there was one particular event in those wild years when you looked at yourself and thought, I can't carry on doing this. I need to make some changes.
back then, like before becoming an adult,
Yeah, yeah.
or
Or even in your
no, I don't.
even in your late teen years, you know, everybody seems to hit a point where they go, oh, if I carry on this path, I'm going to end up in a bad way or in a wrong way. Or so, was there a moment that you can think of that you think you sat yourself down and you said to yourself, Trevor, you've got to think about where you're going here, and then that was the moment that sort of set you on a path towards a more career-driven way of thinking?
I know. I always had a good work ethic. Like I was able, one of those people where I was able to screw off, but work was always good. So like
Yeah.
I was able to do well in both, but I never really did my full potential in work, because I was, still partying and living life and stuff, which it's not bad. It doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. But I think after high school, I did calm down in some ways. But definitely would have wished I would have waited a little bit longer. But probably the biggest turning point for me changing as a person was when my daughter was born.
Okay.
Like the moment my daughter was born, my entire outlook on life changed. Like
And how old is your daughter?
She just turned 16 a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
So, but yeah, when she was born, like I felt the change. Like it was like a jolt within myself. And then my perspective on a lot of things changed. But they've changed, throughout my life at different periods, times where I've made mistakes or allowed myself to look at things in a different perspective. Stopped for a second and thought, like, why do I think this certain way about this? Why am I so sure about how I feel about a certain subject or this or that? And when I break it down, a lot of times it just came to, that's just what I've always thought because I was told that by somebody else, or I saw other people feeling or believing that. And I just assumed like I respected these people or I like them, or I just, at the time, it seemed like it was probable. And I never questioned it again. Yeah. And as I got older, I started rethinking a lot of things and being more open to rethinking things and doing things a different way or thinking about things in a different way. Because like really all I'm doing at that point is living other people's mistakes that they've passed on to me. Like their opinions might have been wrong or it was right for them, which doesn't necessarily mean that it's the right position for me. And it took a long time to figure out that that's the thing. Yeah. That there is a lot of things in your life that you have to reevaluate and ask yourself, why do I feel this way? Why am I assuming that this is the way this is? When there's so many different possibilities or options. Like, why am I just cemented in this mindset? When
some people never hit that point ever in their life,
I know.
They're born into a certain way of living, into a certain family circle, social circle, religious circle, community circle, whatever it be, and they never hit that point of critical thinking as what actually have I been told, and how has it shaped me, and should I continue to believe the things I've been told? So yeah, some people never reach that phase, and it's interesting. I've reached that phase, and you have your mind opened when you hit that phase. You're like, why do I actually believe the things that I believe, and should I believe the things that I believe? So it's an interesting sort of phase of life when you hit that point. If you could go back to, let's say, 18, 19-year-old Trevor, to give them some advice, to give yourself some advice, what do you think the advice would be that you would give yourself if you could go back to that moment?
I would tell myself, stop talking yourself out of doing things that you have the ability to do. Stop making excuses for not trying to do the things that deep down inside, you know, you either can do or that you want to do.
Yeah.
Because for a long time, like I wanted to start my own business. I wanted to do these things or take chances on things. And I talked myself out of it because I looked at people that were succeeding at these things and looking at them, and they seemed like they were on a mountain and that there was no way to get to where they were. And just trying to imagine, like, at one point that they were just like me just seemed crazy. And now I've realized that there's not much that separates the successful from the unsuccessful, except for the fact that the people that are unsuccessful, chances are they just never tried. Like, yeah, a lot of famous people or successful people, yeah, some of them had a one-up. You know, they were born into having resources that other people don't have, but that's not the norm.
No.
That's something that can happen, but there's a lot of people out there that are self-made or that came up with something that, you know, nobody saw something coming out of them. Like, and they did it. And the only thing that separates those people from everybody else is that they took a chance on themselves and they tried, and they didn't talk themselves out of giving it 110%. So I would have told my 19-year-old self, believe in your abilities, you know, take chances, you know, don't look at people that are successful and think I could never do that, or they have something that I don't have. Most likely they don't. Like, really all they did was they went out and did it. They took a chance. You know, they didn't give up on themselves before they even tried. So that's probably the number one thing I would tell a 19-year-old me.
And now you're a father to a 16-year-old girl.
And 3 more. So I've got a 16-year-old girl, 15-year-old boy, 7-year-old boy, and a 5-year-old boy.
Well, okay, so you've been busy. You need a bigger telly, Trevor. That's what you need, a bigger TV. So let's talk about your 16-year-old girl then, the most probably adult and mature one of the bunch. Would the same piece of advice that you would give yourself, would that be the piece of advice you'd love to give to her, or would it be shaped differently because she's a girl and the way the world is now?
No, I give her the same advice. Yeah.
And do you think the world has changed?
Blindly. Prepare yourself. You know, don't be like, oh, you know what, I want to be a hairstylist and no idea. I'm going to go out and try to get a job. Like, you need to spend that time, you know, honing your skill or educating yourself on so you can develop something. You know, like, don't go out and screw up your first attempt by being unprepared. Like, you know, do the groundwork and, you know, put in some effort and you can probably succeed. And even if you don't, who cares? Like, I've talked to entrepreneurs and different business owners and just other business owners, like, oh, I saw, you know, you were talking to me 2 years ago that you were going to try and do this and this and this. Oh, it didn't happen. Oh, that sucks. And they look at it as a failure. And it's like, no, I've tried it a lot of things, and some things have failed and some have been really successful. But the point is trying. Yeah. Like, just because you fail at something doesn't mean that, like, oh, you might as well give up in the grand scheme of things. Like, if you look at people like Elon Musk, the guy has a lot of great successes, but then I'm sure he probably has a mountain of failures. But the fact is, he keeps pushing. And when you look at anybody that's successful, they're going to have failures. The thing is that they didn't quit. You know, like, I talk to some people and they look at other people that have tried things and failed at it as they're a failure. No, they took a chance. They tried something, it didn't work. And chances are they'll try something again and they might fail again. And then they'll learn from that and they'll apply what they learned from that failure and they'll put it to their next try. And they'll just keep trying and eventually they'll succeed. But that's the point.
What I find interesting about Elon is that he's not even known for his failures. He would have had them and has had them, but you try and name 3 failures he's had, you're not going to be able to do that. Whereas you name 3 successes, you're going to name PayPal, Tesla, and SpaceX, you know. And we are known for our our successes more than we are our failures. And so that, for me, when that dawned on me, that actually you become famous not for the failure but for the success, it was one of the things that spurred me forward to try new things, explore new horizons. I've done things that are UK firsts in some instances and Europe firsts in other instances, and now I'm able to say I've done a couple of world firsts, which is really nice, and sort of leave my mark on the industry that I inhabit now. And it's about legacy, you know. I hope that I will be known for my successes more than my failures. I have had them. More really in personal life than in business life. I'm to date I've managed not to have too many failures of business. I've made some mistakes and I've had the roller coaster, you know. Particularly in clean solar solutions here in the UK. I say that I've ridden the solar coaster with that business, because it's been up and down, it's been rock and roll, but the highs have been very high, the lows have been very low. But hopefully the things that I will be known for are the joys and the successes. And that's what I find interesting about Elon. You try and name 3 mistakes he's made and we all struggle, really, and that's of great encouragement to me as well. So today, then, you're the owner of Shamblin Softwash and Pressure Washing. You've mentioned you've made some mistakes. It's something that doesn't really make it onto too many podcasts. People talk about their accomplishments and talk about the great things they've got going on. Do you want to deep dive into 1 or 2 of the mistakes that you've made in business, just to sort of share with our listeners so that they might avoid that pitfall?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I have no problem talking about mistakes or failures. And that actually it brings up a whole bunch of thoughts about people that do like business coaching and stuff like that. A lot of them, seem to put off this persona that, they have everything together and they're good at everything. But yeah, I know I have plenty of failures. I had an employee steal like $10,000 from me through fraud, because I wasn't watching my business close enough, and I trusted them. I'd known them for a long time, and I put too much trust out there, and it ruined. Besides the money aspect of it, money comes and goes, but this is a person that I was friends with for over 20 years. It worked for me for a long time, and I considered a big failure on my part. He stole, but there's a lot of responsibility, I think, that I take for it more than I think some people would, because I think I left that employee, who also was a friend, out in the wind. I was going through a lot of personal stuff at the time, and I kind of stepped away, and I think I'd put too much too many things in his hand without being there as a support. And I think it put a wedge between us. And I think he probably felt like he was pulling more weight than he should have, or there's a couple different things. But I failed as an owner and a friend by assuming that everything would be fine. And it wasn't. And he stole, but at the end of the day, like, I let things go too far without me being there. And so, that was a big failure. I got involved with a manufacturing company a couple years ago that was a small time business, and I invested in it with designs and time, and a business that I was told that was half mine, that we were building together. And I trusted him that our handshake agreement would hold up and we would be fine. I felt like his character and my character were on the same level. And then 2 years later, after delays and delays that happened about us finalizing everything. It pretty much didn't happen, and all the work that I'd put in and growing the business just kind of went down the drain. And it sucked, and it just kind of taught me a big lesson about, like, handshake deals only go so far, and how much time do you want to invest in something that you don't have a guarantee with. And I was just at the time I was really excited about what we were doing and what we were developing, and I was in maximum overdrive, just coming up with ideas, designing things, and putting stuff out there and trying to make improvements, to stop and say, okay, have I done my due diligence in making sure that, I'm not going to get screwed in this deal? And it ended up biting me in the ass because I didn't listen to that part of me that was like, hey, this should have been in writing a long time ago.
Yeah.
Like, we should just stop.
Yeah.
Like, stop building this company up or helping it before it goes too far. And I didn't listen to myself. And if I would have just stopped and listened to what my inner voice had been telling me for a long time, I wouldn't have been in that position.
So the common thread there is interesting. The common thread, if you could sum it up in one word, is trust, isn't it? Because you trusted these people too much. Do you feel you still trust people now?
I do. I don't think I handed out nearly as much. I think because I generally think that most people are, I want people to be like who I feel like I am. That if I say I'm going to do something,
if only,
yeah. Because for me, it doesn't seem like such a crazy thing to live by. It doesn't seem that hard. It's something that I've always done. Like, I've had moments in my life where I've gone against probably what I feel like I should have done, but I feel like those situations have been very minimal. I generally find it easier just to be honest and open with people and be straight. And I like being able to look at myself in the morning.
Yeah, that goes a long way.
And it's hard for me sometimes to imagine that other people don't have the same feeling, but I have to remind myself that isn't necessarily true. And we're surrounded every day by examples of how and why that isn't true. So instead of hoping that's in most people, you just have to kind of be neutral, I think, until they give you a reason to feel one way or the other. But then again, people always do change. So just because you trusted somebody today doesn't necessarily mean that you should automatically trust them tomorrow. But it doesn't mean that you need to make them earn trust over and over again. But you should stay aware of what's going on, definitely. And like we talked about earlier, reevaluate things from time to time too. Question, why do I trust this person? Are they showing me reasons to trust them still?
So our viewers, some are very experienced businessmen, entrepreneurs, some are new business owners, some people are looking to set up a business. You've been, let's say, royally screwed a couple of times, as have I. I have had a fraud as well. Mine was a £350,000 fraud, so that's probably $420,000 fraud. I was running 4 businesses at the time, and my accounts lady who ran all the accounts internally for me, she was an employee, was siphoning money away, cash through one of the businesses, and then she set up a bank account offshore, and she was creating invoices within our company, and it was all on our letterhead, all within our software, but the bank account details were not our bank account, they were that bank account. So I trusted the lady, as you did, and probably too much. But equally, I thought, well, it's her job. It's her job to look after the accounts in the business. It's not my forte. How would I even spot it? We did spot it, and we did catch it pretty early on, but still, over $400,000 of damage is enough. Decimated my business. I had to made 22 people redundant. I sacked 2 because I found out there were 2 involved in the fraud. So that left me at the time with me and my wife, as was now ex-wife, and I lost it all. I had to sell all the vehicles, move out the offices, just shrink it all back down to zero, and start all over again. But it's interesting that you come back to this word trust again, because I had to write to all my creditors and say, this is what's happened. I've lost everything. This is how it's happened. This is my total debt liability to everybody. And I said, if one of you comes for me through the legal system to try and get money, you'll make me bankrupt. I'll go insolvent. I won't have a choice, and you won't see your money. But if you give me time, I promise you that you'll get your money back. I don't know when, but I promise you that I will pay you back. And over the following 48 hours, I had this trickle of emails come in from all these creditors, all these guys I've known for years, to say, Steve, you've always been straight. You've always paid on time. We understand the difficulty you've got, horrendous thing you've gone through. We'll give you the time. And not a single person tried to take me through the legal system to get their money. And that's because over time I'd built up the trust. And I've had to learn to trust people less, unfortunately, than I did back then, both in business and in personal life. It's a very tricky thing. So I come back to this experience range that we've got of our viewers, the very experienced and the newbies. If you could give the newbies something from the Trevor Shamblin Red Flag book, what would it be that people who are younger in business and more naive in business, what are some of the things that they need to look out for as a sign that someone's about to do them over? Can you pinpoint any and share?
Yeah, the biggest one, and I actually tell people this all the time, is watch out for people that always have an answer to every question. The people that always seem to have an answer right off the top of their head to whatever question comes up, no matter what it is, and never says, you know what, I don't know. Let me look into that and get back to you. Or, you know what, I'm not really sure. Somebody that just always seems to have an answer, no matter if it's true or not. Watch out for those people.
Yeah.
Because if they're willing to give you bad information knowingly just because they don't want to sound like they don't have an answer, that's dangerous.
Eventually they'll tell you anything
like that. Yeah. And being in business with somebody like that, it is dangerous. Because the wrong information that they're giving you, even though they don't necessarily intend it to be hurtful or to work against you, it absolutely will. If somebody gives you bad information on whether or not you can mix 2 chemicals together, and they just want to sound like they know everything, they're like, oh no, it's totally safe to mix those 2 together. They're not intending to hurt you by the fact that they don't know if you mix those 2 things together it'll create mustard gas. But it will. But to them, they just don't want to stop this persona that they know everything, and they're willing to tell you something that could hurt you just to make sure that they keep that persona going. And that's dangerous. So people like that, watch out for.
So you mentioned Facebook earlier. Let's switch topics just slightly, but it runs on nicely from the subject that we're talking about here, to do with trust and knowledge and things like this. So you say that you inhabited some of the pressure washing forums on Facebook. I know that you still do. Do you see wrong information being put out by people on Facebook? Yeah.
More now than ever. I mean, there was a lot back then, and there was a lot of. It wasn't like I would just read. I'd be like, oh, I want to know, how to do this, and I go out in the first conversation I saw about it, just jotted it down. I would have to see something multiple times, and see who it was coming from, and if there were discussions on it where people would talk about like why that would work or wouldn't work. Because there was a lot of times where I'd see people sharing information on things and it would sound okay. It didn't seem like it was bad information. And then I'd see discussions where people would have, 40 comments about somebody saying like, oh, this is the right way to do it. And then it would, turn off into another conversation specifically about what they said. And then you could read people that were saying that's not true because of this, or that's only true half the time unless this is also happening simultaneously.
Yeah.
And you'd really have to dissect things and read different opinions on it to find out that, sometimes it wasn't true, that they were wrong, or that information was specific to a certain situation or even where the person was located.
Mm.
Like, I'd see people discussing, oh, we have to run chemical at this ratio to get, this surface clean. And then you'd see somebody else kind of like, oh, that's way too strong. There's no reason you'd ever have to run that chemical that strong to get that clean. That's way too much. And in a situation like that, they might both be right.
Mm.
And a situation where that, or what would make that true is, let's say the first person is saying, I need to run this chemical or this soap at this ratio, and this is what we need for it to work. That might be because the water in their area is so hard that they have to overcompensate with heavier chemical use to counteract for the fact that their water levels, their TDS readings are in the 600s. Whereas the other guy that's saying, oh, we're having to run chemical at a quarter of that. We don't have to run that much. They're in an area where TDS is under 100. So their water's a lot softer. So the chemicals or the detergents or the surfactants in their mix is working so much differently in soft water than it is in hard water. I mean, but you'll have two guys sitting there who are both actually right, thinking the other one's wrong, and neither one of them are open to finding out why we're both having such different experiences. But we both are looking at each other like we're wrong. When if we just stop and talk a little bit and kind of dissect the differences in our areas, we'd figure out, okay, well, this is a water thing. So now you figured out information that's going to help you understand your job even better, understanding that water actually changes how soaps interact. That can change a lot of things for you. And like being able to have a conversation with somebody and slow down and take your ego down a little bit and actually learn that instead of sitting there arguing online for an hour, and then at the end of the hour you both haven't gotten anywhere. Now you both hate each other, and you haven't learned anything. When if you both would have stopped for a second and talked it out and figured out like, okay, well, why are we getting different results? Why is it working for you but it's not for me? Then they come away smarter. But again, people's egos get in the way sometimes.
I think for me, I mean, I inhabit the solar panel cleaning forums and some window cleaning forums. I window cleaned for 26 years before I sold that business. So I've got really good insight into that. I did pressure cleaning for about 18, 19 years and was also sealing driveways and things like that as well. So that was an interesting part of the work that I was doing. But for me, when I'm on Facebook, I want to find out the credentials of the person that's giving out the information. And one of the things that I automatically discount is how long they've been doing it. Because you can do something wrong for an awful long time. And just because you say, well, I've been doing this for 12 years and it's absolutely fine. You can do it wrong for 12 years because you don't know what you don't know. And it's not till someone comes along and tries to educate you that you might need to look in the mirror, look at your processes, look at your working methodologies and go, okay, well, am I actually making the best use of the time? Am I making the best use of the chemical? Am I making, in the case of solar cleaning, the best use of my robot or whatever it may be? And so length of service, length of time as an industry is no indicator of knowledge to my mind anyway. So I want to dig deeper into the credentials of the person that I'm talking to. And so I suppose that leads us nicely into another phase of the conversation, really, is that you are involved in the PWNA. Do you want to explain what that organization is and what it does for the benefit of listeners who may not know, and what your role is within the PWNA?
Sure. So the PWNA is the Power Washers of North America. It's the oldest power washing association in North America. There's been a bunch over the years that have come and gone, and some that are still around. But it's the oldest and largest association. Basically, we're an association ran by contractors. All the people on the board are all either current business owners or people that some have retired or are in pretty close proximity of retiring. But all people that have been successful in the power washing industry that just want to give back and want to try and help people that either are currently doing it or wanting to get into it or just wanting to do things differently or just educate themselves. We have anything from it's always been mostly technique things that have been taught with some safety, and over the past couple of years we've really just increased the amount of education materials that we have available to our members, especially for safety. I mean, we have general safety stuff. We've got ladder safety, first aid. We have a DOT class. We have solar cleaning class, a safety class, fall protection, chemical safety, along with all the traditional, house washing, roof cleaning classes, flat work. We're putting together a drone safety class. We're doing solar now, and then we're also developing business classes on how to knowing your numbers, how to do your own advertising. We're really putting a lot of effort into the business side of education, particularly because one our members have asked for it. They've really loved the safety classes that we have. They love the technical stuff, but they're really hungry for the business classes. And we see that more and more at these conventions where people are showing up and they want to learn all the technical stuff and they want to know the safety, but they want to know how to sell. They want to know how to run their business. They want to know how to make it more efficient. They want to know
software, right?
Yeah, all that. And they generally see a lot of speakers at other conventions, and they sit in the classes, and they give out a little bit of information, but a lot of it it's kind of a sales pitch to, hey, take our business training courses at this amount a month, and people end up leaving and going home, and they have a little bit that they pick up, but they really are really hungry for learning the business aspect. And we're really trying to give that to them without having to do the, paying X amount of dollars a month to get training. We're trying to develop that kind of in-house to just offer it to our members as much as possible. We have some really amazing people on the board of directors that are the perfect people to put this stuff together and to teach it. And we're just super excited to put that stuff out there for people to use, because we've just had so much feedback from people saying that that's what they're really, really hungry for.
Yeah.
And at the PWNA, we just want to give people what they want when it comes time to growing their businesses. We're listening to what they need to be successful. They want hands-on training. They want access to materials, and they want those business classes.
Yeah. One of the things that we were very strict about when it came to organizing the ISCA convention and all the speakers is that they weren't 20-minute sales pitches. We're very strict on that. By all means, touch on the subject of what you offer, but you're not there for that. You're there to educate. They are education-driven times that you've got allotted to you. And so, yeah, we're very strict, because it's horrendous to go to a show. You pay your money, you pay your ticket price, and then you sit there for 6 hours and you get sold to all day. I hate that sort of an event. I'm there to learn, not to be sold to. If I want to be sold to, I'll go online and find a business for me. I'm there because I want to learn things there, but I can't learn in the outside world, and I can't teach myself either necessarily. So we're strict on that, and I think it's a good thing. And conventions really need to tighten up on that, because it can just turn into 6-hour sales pitches, and it's just, I don't think it's healthy. I don't think it's good, and I don't think that's what you should be going to a convention or an expo to do. If you want to be sold to, go to the booths. They're the people that will sell to you. It's an active choice to go to speak to them. When you're sat there as a receiver of information in the classes, you want to be taught. You don't want to be sold, you want to be taught. And so next year at the convention, we've got some plans already, some new features that we're going to incorporate for next year, which is like we're going to run the hands-on demo all day instead of just having it in the break times. We're going to have it all day. People will be able to book a 15-minute slot with a vendor at a time of their choosing. They will have like a 1-to-1 or a 2-to-1 session with that vendor at that time. And they will be able to use the equipment physically. It's hard when you've got 20, 30 people around watching a demo, but by having it spread out across the whole of the day, benefit the vendors that are there because they get that more personal time with a potential client, and it benefits the person that's actually got their questions because they're going to get their questions heard and then answered as well. So that's a very different take than sit in a chair and being sold to for 20 minutes. So what do you feel, not in your business, but in the industry of pressure washing? Obviously, it's changed and evolved over the years as equipment and chemicals come to the market. What do you feel is the single biggest challenge in your industry right now?
Oh man, biggest challenge in our industry right now. Well, I think we have a couple. One that is not affecting everybody, but specifically affecting people in California is the CARB SOAR regulations for gas engines. Okay. So essentially what that is in the state of California, they put regulations in place that's going to make it to where 2028 is the last year that we could use gas-powered engines in California for pressure washing, and everything will have to be either electric or battery.
Okay.
That is going to be a big deal. And unfortunately, a lot of people that are even in that, the contractors are in California are not aware of the regulation, or they have a very wrong vision of what that is and what it's going to be when it hits. A lot of people think it's going to be just a simple issue of being able to drive out of state, buy an engine, and then bring it back into the state and everything will be fine, which technically you probably will be able to do, but most likely the state of California will have people going around checking engines to make sure that they have the right stickers on them that say that they're compliant.
The Gestapo will be out in force.
Yeah, and then also some of the dealers have already talked about how they've been talked to by the government, or they've heard things that would make it seem like if they end up selling equipment to people that are living in California and then it ends up in California, that they can pay a fine for it. So we might have some vendors actually checking IDs from people buying equipment just to make sure that it's not going to end up in California, which sounds crazy, but it's a real issue. Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. It's weird in the state of California, the things that they focus on enforcing and the things that they just kind of let go by. I just don't get. Like, you can walk into a grocery, like a store, and shoplift as long as it's not over $900. Like, the police don't really do that much about it. Right. But if you have an engine that isn't CARB compliant, like they'll find you right there.
Yeah.
It's just weird. But then the unfortunate thing is a lot of people think like, oh, that's just a California thing. That's not going to affect me because I'm in Florida or I'm in New Jersey. But Washington, it's coming also, but in Washington, it's actually going to be illegal to possess them. So even if you have a pre-existing equipment now, after the law comes into place in the state of Washington, it's actually illegal to possess it. So at that point, if they see gas-powered engines anywhere after a certain amount of time, they know that they're illegal. So they're actually going to make you get rid of pre-existing equipment. And that's something that's already running through the House for the state of Washington, and most people aren't aware of it. The same thing is going on in the state of Oregon. They're not going to outlaw the possession of it, but it'll be the same thing. You can't own it. It's going on in Colorado, New Jersey, Washington.
Surely, Trevor, surely Donald Trump is not going to allow that. Surely he's not. He loves gas
Well,
engines.
but that's the thing. This is state law, so there's a difference between federal law and state
Okay.
law.
Okay. Yeah.
And there was a thing that came in the news about 9 months ago. It's the Chevron Accord, which is basically it was overturned, and what the Chevron Accord was bodies of the United States, like the EPA, would be able to make laws and regulations kind of on their own, and they really had no oversight. So they would be able to say, we feel like this should be a law. We can develop the law ourselves, vote it on ourselves, and basically impose it without any challenge from the courts to see if it's even constitutional. And that got overturned, so it opened the possibility for the government, or at least the judicial part of it, to say like this is unconstitutional, or you can't just place those things onto people without it being evaluated.
Yeah.
And we're still not really sure yet what exactly that's going to do to some existing laws, and even the carb soar law. We don't know if it's going to have the effect on it that we're hoping it's going to do, which is to open transparency to make sure that the laws that they're putting in place are constitutional.
Okay.
And then also, like with Trump coming in the office, like we've had a couple discussions, because I'm on the carb soar board for the PWNA and CETA, and the meetings that we've had where Trump has been a subject that's come up, we don't really know. Like, we know that definitely puts us in a better position to at least have the Washington, D.C. part of the government on our side, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to change what's going on the state level. And the state level has its own level of rules that it can put into place. Now, I'm more than open to Trump being able to change the carb soar rule, and I hope he can and does, because I think it's unfair. I like the idea of electric being an option and developing, but I don't think it should be forced on people. I think that's something that people should be able to transition over to when they feel like it works best for them and they feel like it's a smart business decision.
Yeah.
So once the technology gets there, I think people should make the switch because they want to, not because they have to. Because as of right now, we don't have the equipment to replace what we have. Like my business, like, we use generally 8 to 10 gallon per minute pressure washers. That's our norm. We do large commercial projects. We're not, little tiny storefronts or houses anymore. We do large complexes, large manufacturing facilities, warehousing, and we need big machines. And those size machines are just not available in electric.
Yeah.
There's one machine out there that is close to that size, and the performance on it is pretty promising, but the machine costs over $100,000, whereas the gas-powered equivalent you can get for $10,000.
Yeah.
So it's 10 times the cost.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't make sense. I own 8 huge machines. So I had to replace those with $800,000 worth of electric machines. I don't have that kind of funds to replace my entire fleet with electric.
Not without going and looking in your pillowcase.
No, I don't have a pillowcase that big, and it sure isn't filled up with anything like that. I wish, or I wouldn't be out here washing.
So, I mean, as a Brit, I feel quite free to be able to talk about American politics. To me, surely the right thing happened in November with Trump getting elected. That has to be the right thing. I visited the States numerous times over the last sort of 6-7 years, and every single person I speak to said I had more expendable income in my pocket at the end of each month, at the end of the year, under Trump than I did under Biden. And I think as business owners, that's one of our chief concerns, isn't it? Can I grow a business? Can I look after my family better through growing a business? And And if I have more expendable income in my pocket at the end of every month to care for my family, then that's the guy I'm going to go. I'm going to go and vote for. So I'm moving out to the States in the summer. I'm getting a visa that I can get for 3 years. So I'm coming to live in Vegas soon, which will be nice. It's an upgrade on the British weather. But on the flip side, we've just had a Labour government come into power, and Keir Starmer is the name of the Prime Minister. Some people call him Keir Starlin. We call him two-tier Keir because of the two-tier policing that's arrived in the UK overnight. People say that we're facing Starmageddon because of all of the changes in policy, and we had a budget which is ruinous for business owners and small businesses. Ruinous. They thought that it was going to have the effect of creating more jobs for low-income earners by increasing the national minimum wage. Actually, it's having instantly the reverse effect, in that business owners are shrinking deliberately the size of their business because they don't want to pay the extra taxes that the Labour government has imposed on them. So in the UK, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, if you're not leaving, you should be looking to leave, because there's no incentive to be here as a business owner in the UK right now, and that's for the next 4 years. So I think the American side of things under Trump, I think, is going to go up, and I think the UK is going to go downhill very rapid. And I think there's going to be a massive disparity between our two countries at the end of a 3 or 4 year period of time. And I know which side of the water I want to be on. And it's part of the reason that I'm coming to the States, is because I believe I can thrive under Trump, when I've got no chance of thriving under a Labour Keir Starmer government, that's for sure. So yeah, I feel quite passionate that you need to be going where the best opportunities are as well. And be willing to physically lift yourself up. I can have a really good idea for an app. I can take it down to London, give it to a tech company, and they'll look at it and go, no, that's not going to work. I can have an idea for an app, and I can fly to San Francisco with it, and I can present it to that company, and they're going to give me $100,000 of seed investment to try and grow it. It's just, you've got to go to the physical place where you have the best opportunity. And in the solar market, bringing it round to solar, the US solar market is 40 times bigger than it is here in the UK. The UK is incredibly professional. We have literally some of the world's brightest minds here in niche parts of the solar industry. We've deployed a huge amount of solar for such a small island in a very short space of time. And because of the weather over here being different to certain parts of the States, it's very hard to maintain assets over here. They degrade, they break, they get water into them. That crucial element of getting water into solar arrays is something that we've faced a long time over here, which is where I feel education is needed in the US, is that people still fail to recognize somehow that they are spraying water onto electricity creating devices, yet people think there's no risk associated with that. And that kind of blows my mind. So thinking about the role that the PWNA play, you said earlier that they've got solar safety classes and things like that. I think you've got like Mike Draper's associated with PWNA. I'm sure you're getting your working at height training through Mike. I'm sure that you're getting your drone stuff through Mike as well, because I know he was working on that. Mike, as he knows, and I'm not saying it's just because I'm on camera, but he's top guy. I believe strongly in what Mike is doing. Is Mike your source of the solar stuff, or have you got other people within the organization? Where are you finding the information for the solar safety to the point where you feel comfortable as an organization publishing it?
Mostly through Mike as far as the safety stuff. He started that at least a year and a half ago. That I'm aware of, but I'm sure it was going on before I was aware. But it's been a discussion ever since I came on the board of the PWNA. It's been a discussion that we just knew that it was going to be a big thing. And like when I came on, it was one of the first subjects that I talked about that I felt like we really needed to get a hold of, and everybody that was there was very much either already on board or it didn't take very much talking into to see how important it was. And a lot of the people that just weren't aware of it is because there are parts of the country where they just don't have solar, but they see that it's expanding everywhere else. But yeah, Mike is our main safety person when it came time to solar. And I think that was when I first became aware of you, as he was talking about meeting with you. I think he actually met with you in England at one point, or in the
No,
UK,
no, yeah,
or
no,
was it,
we've
or
never
was
met
it
in England,
here?
but we've met numerous times in the States. Yeah, mainly at Vegas in the various
Okay.
shows there. Yeah.
Yeah. And then that was the first time I had heard about you, and that you were working on some programs, and he was. And I think at first you guys didn't see eye to eye on where things were going, but then I think he told me that once you guys actually had a conversation between the two of you, you both figured out that you were more on the page than you weren't. A lot more stuff that.
Mike was very slightly wrong. And I can say that because if he was sat where I was, he would say exactly the same about me. But we have a great deal of respect for each other. We discuss things frequently to do with safety and solar. We are very much aligned, and I think there was this public perception that we were at loggerheads when actually we weren't. And the reason for that meeting, it was in actually the Trump Hotel in Vegas. And the reason for that meeting was to ensure that we were both on the same page, which we were, and we were really pleased about that. And so we could go away in our various directions and start to dispel this myth that was floating around, or they're rowing in the background. And that just, it's never been the case. There was some points that we clarified together, but we ended up being on the same page at the beginning of the conversation, at the end of the conversation. So I think I don't know, but I see Mike and I collaborating closer and further, and in the long term, I think we'll do more work together. At the convention, for the ISCA convention just gone, we collaborated for the teaching for the first time on the solar safety, which was a really fun thing to get done. And Mike upgraded his wardrobe and got a decent shirt for the event as well, which was a great thing to see. Yeah, we had a good time there. We had a good time. So yeah, I think there are several organizations publishing best practice guidelines. There's ISCA, there's IWCA, I think, have got some best practice guidelines, and I think PWNA have got some best practice guidelines as well. I believe strongly in unification, so I think moving forward, the three organizations that have got the best practice guidelines would do well to sit down together in the future to go, okay, are we perfectly aligned? Because if I attend the PWNA convention and then I go to an ISCA convention, I can't hear one thing at one convention and hear a different thing at another, because who do I believe at that stage? I'm probably not going to believe any of them, and I'm going to carry on going and doing my own thing. So I think to knit the best practice guidelines together is a really important next stage, really, for the US market, because it adds credibility then to each and every organization. So I think that's something really for the future. Do you see any other I suppose a good question is, do you see any misinformation in the solar groups now that you've been to the ISCA convention, now that you've done the ISCA training and you're ISCA certified? What did you learn there that you didn't know before that was like an eye-opening moment for you?
Specifically for safety, or
any of it, really? Any of it? Yeah.
There was a lot of stuff. I think more of it was the non-safety things, but I've also learned over the past 2 years a ton of things that I was wrong about, and safety things that I thought were safe that weren't. But I think some of the biggest things that I've learned is the potential of getting shocked from solar. I learned that a couple years ago, but I didn't know that was a possibility. And I had been told by actually a solar installer, and this kind of goes to the, be careful of people that answer questions that they don't know the answers to. Is I asked a solar installer, one day when we were working on a job, we were cleaning solar, and I saw him installing solar across the street. And I went over and was talking to the installer, and he said, "Oh yeah, I'm a general contractor, electrician." And he was telling me that, "Oh yeah, no, you can't get shocked from these systems. They're designed to, to where, you won't get shocked." And I said, "Even if we're brushing it with water?" He goes, "Oh no, you're good. There's no electricity. As long as you don't touch anything, down by the inverter, you're fine, or you don't go into one of the lines or something." But he said, "No, there's no way to get shocked." And I was like, well, this guy's just, he's installing these things. He's a licensed contractor. He must know what he's talking about. And for the longest time, like, I thought they were safe.
Mm.
And it turns out, no, it's not true. Not true at all.
I mean, I've been electrocuted twice.
Luckily,
whilst cleaning.
Luckily, I've never been electrocuted. None of my employees have ever been electrocuted. I'm aware now of the danger of it, and it's something that we discuss like very, very often. And I think back to the times where I was rolling around just thinking everything was fine, but I didn't know any better. And at that time, this is 5-6 years ago, there was no training available. There was conversations online, and you had 95% of the people that said, "Oh no, it's safe. There's nothing wrong. You're good." And there was no resource to find out, what the truth was.
No.
But luckily now, we have multiple organizations that are all working together to try and figure out what's real, what isn't, what's truth, what isn't. And like you said, hopefully at some point we put the best minds together on this subject, and we can come up with, an agreement of this is what's true. This is what's not true. This is what we need to do. This is what we need to stay away from.
Yeah.
And we just all need to be on the same page, and eventually we'll get there. It'll be like any other industry where there's, different opinions, and it just takes time and people being open to not having to be right. And eventually we'll figure out, what the truth is. And then we can share that with people and try and make it the norm.
Do you think the solar cleaning industry should be regulated?
By like needing a license?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I think there's a lot of aspects of our industry that in some way or another needs to have, not necessarily, I don't know if I want to say oversight or regulation, but a higher threshold of accountability. And a higher threshold of accountability for the people that are just doing it irresponsibly. Because those people make it harder for the people that do want to do it responsibly to do that.
Yeah.
And I have had this mindset myself at times in my business where I've wanted to do things a different way because I felt like this is the safer way to do it. It's the better way to do it, but I know it costs more, or I know it's dramatically more work to do it this way, and I want to do it, but then I can't because I'm competing against 99% of the people that are doing it the cheap, easy way to do it. And how am I going to survive by stepping out and doing it a different way?
Yeah.
And there's been times where I've been like, I'm not willing to do it the way that I know that it shouldn't be done. And I'll only do it the right way, and I'll deal with the consequences, and hopefully people will catch on. And there's other ones where I'm like, I know I can't compete and do it the right way, so I'm just not going to do it at all.
Yeah.
And residential roof cleaning is one of the things that I got out of, a little over a year and a half ago. I started cleaning roofs, soft washing roofs in California before most people had even heard about it. I started doing it nine years ago when people in California didn't even know what soft washing was. I was one of the only people in Northern California doing it, and the first ones. And now I see a ton of people out cleaning roofs and doing it completely unsafe on so many levels.
Yeah.
And I just can't compete, and I don't want to, because if I do, I'm going to have to either raise prices so high that I can't compete, or I'm going to have to do it unsafely, and I don't want to do either one, so I stopped doing them.
Yeah.
because there's so many people out there doing unsafe or just doing them the wrong way.
Hmm.
And I wish there was more people doing it right, but how do you make that happen? You either regulate it or educate.
Yeah.
So I've done what I felt is the best thing to try and get that out there by educating. It's one of the reasons why I'm on the PWNA, is because I thought I could either sit here and complain about how not enough people know how to do this the right way and they're ruining the industry, and all I'm doing is complaining and not doing about it. So I made myself available to go out and teach people.
Yeah.
So instead of complaining about it, I'm out trying to make a difference and trying to change the way that things are done as much as I can.
And I think I've gone down the same road as well, trying to educate people. I think education is so important. Some of the education that ISCA gives away is free. Some of the education that we have is paid. Some people say, well, if it's life-saving, it should be free. Well, passing your driving test is life-saving, but you still pay for your lessons. So just because something is life-saving doesn't mean it should automatically be free. And coming back to your point about commercial decisions as well, when it comes to safety, I've cleaned, like, in 12 years, probably close to 10,000 systems. We've cleaned about 9 million panels in 12 years. So that's ground and roof mounted. That's a huge amount of solar. We now, if people want to cut a corner, we just simply say to them, the safety of our staff is not something we're willing to compromise on. You pay the money for the safety features, or you find somebody else. So we now are not afraid to pitch ourselves as being the Ferrari of the solar cleaning world. That goes for Clean Solar Solutions UK and Clean Solar Solutions America. Now we've expanded the company into the States. We are the Ferrari level. You pay the price, or we go on to the next customer. And I've got an installation company here in the UK. And if people want to cut a corner on the installation to save some money, we'll turn them away. We'll say, you're not our customer. We do Ferrari installations. We do top-notch installations. Yes, you pay for it, but you're going to get the very best. And the same is true when it comes to the safety elements of what we do here in the UK and what we're doing in the States now. Is this is our price point. You want a cheaper company, there's 100 out there that will service you. Go to one of those. But for us, we make no compromises. And so we are that Ferrari, Rolls-Royce grade of company. We're not going to win every job. We're not interested, to be honest, in winning every job, Trevor. That's not our business model. We don't want to buy it and sell it cheap. Yeah, that's not what we're there for. We're there to offer an elite service for a premium price, but you will get the best value for your money, we believe. And so we train all of our people to a high standard in terms of working at height, manual handling, knowledge of solar arrays. My guys, all of my cleaners can go out and know exactly what's wrong with a solar array by eye. And not every solar cleaner can do that. Our reporting is way beyond what people are used to seeing as well. So we offer great value for what we do. It's just a totally different level of service. And so I think I've got an interesting question for you on the last sort of 10 minutes of our discussion. If Trevor, the employer, sends an employee onto let's say a commercial rooftop, that employee is pressure cleaning the roof and by any means gets an electrocution from a solar array, by any means, how is that reported to OSHA? How would OSHA report that in their statistics? And what would happen to Trevor if his staff was not trained with safety knowledge of being around a live solar array? So I suppose 3 questions. How would OSHA record the accident is the first one. Or how would you report it to OSHA?
Oh, I would call OSHA and explain what had happened. I mean, I think that could go a lot of different ways. If that happened and it was from unsafe practices, I think it would, determine if you had taught the employee what they were supposed to do. And if the reason they got hurt was because they didn't follow the rules that they were supposed to follow and that they've been trained on, or if it was a thing where you just didn't train them or you didn't provide them with with the right safety equipment or didn't make sure they had it or require it. That could go two dramatically different ways, just depending on how you would set that up.
So let's play it out. Let's say Trevor's trained his man. He's got full knowledge of the system, and still he gets electrocuted. What happens if you've trained him, given him all the PPE? Trevor's covered himself. What happens in that scenario?
I'm not sure. I've never had that happen. I hope that you can prove that you did all those things. That's part of the issue. Like our training program that we have for the PWNA, it's a computer program that keeps track of all the testing and everything that people do. So I would have documentation that shows that they had been trained, that they understood the materials, and that it actually shows when they took it and when they retested. Like if you were requiring that employee take solar cleaning class every year, it would show that they had done that.
Yeah.
If you had checklists that showed that they had the equipment that they're supposed to have, and they signed for it that morning saying that they left with it, so they had everything they were supposed to have. Yeah, it would be a lot of checking documentation, making sure that you had done what you were supposed to do, and that at the end of the day, it came up that they did what they were supposed to do. But yeah, it wouldn't go well. It'd be a lot of weight on any company to have to go through something like that. Not just for the business aspect of it, but like the stress of having an employee either get hurt or even worse if it went beyond them just getting hurt. Yeah, that could be a pretty big deal.
And what happens to Trevor if he's not trained his employee and he's not issued any of the PPE to his employee? How will OSHA view that?
Oh, they'd ruin you. Yeah, you'd most likely, I mean, you'd be fined beyond a shadow of a doubt, beyond anything you could imagine. And that's just what OSHA is going to do to you. That's not what's going to end up happening to you in a civil lawsuit or anything else. Yeah. Yeah, having your employees walking around without training or the proper equipment is just a ticking time bomb.
And how, I mean, you may not know the accurate answer to this, maybe more a question for Mike, really, but just want to see if you may know this. How would OSHA report that as an accident in the public domain? Would they say, oh, it was a solar panel cleaning electrocution, cause of injury or cause of death, solar panel cleaning electrocution? Is that what they're going to report it as?
I would assume so, but most likely that's a question that Mike has probably been waiting for people to ask him for years. Yeah, because that's like what he does. That's his thing. I mean, he knows that better than anybody.
See, it's my understanding that OSHA are going to log it in one of two ways, and it's only going to be one of two ways. It would go down as a live electricity accident with no further explanation, or it would go down as a working at height accident with no further explanation. So this is one of the things that we come across as an organization, ISCA, is people say, well, how many solar panel cleaning electrocutions are reported? Close to zero is probably the answer.
They're not classified. Yeah. They're not classified in a specific way.
Yeah, we don't have our own little classification box. So I make no bones about it. I've been electrocuted twice. As a business owner, you know, I've got away with it. I've never had an employee electrocuted, thankfully, and that's because off the back of me being electrocuted, I ramped up on my safety really, really quickly, and I educated myself as well. And then it would go down here in the UK as either working at height accident or an electrocution accident. There's no category for solar panel clean electrocution tick, and that's why there's none recorded, is because there's no box to tick for that category. So it doesn't mean the accidents aren't happening. We published a top 5 myths about solar panel cleaning article on the ISCA website a couple of weeks ago, and we put it out on Facebook, and it prompted a really really interesting set of discussions. And people came forward saying, yeah, I've been electrocuted. I'm glad that someone's talking about this because I've been electrocuted. And one guy said, yeah, I've been electrocuted. Another guy said, yeah, glad you've mentioned it. I'll now say to people, I've been electrocuted. So just because it's not being talked about doesn't mean it's not going on. And even when you have a major accident, it may just go in the live electricity accident box.
Absolutely.
So it's an
Yeah.
interesting way of viewing it, and the stats can be misleading. The fact that there's zero recorded is not zero in the real world. They're just being categorized a different way. So I think
Yeah.
there's still an awful lot of work to be done when it comes to education. I mean, ISCA have trained over 900 people now globally. I don't know of any organization that's trained that many people. We want to get it past 1,000 in 2025 if we can. The training course, I think, is translated into 34 languages, and it covers 31 countries. So they are literally country specific sets of training. We've looked at what that country is doing, what that country requires from a safety point of view. But the good thing about electricity and gravity is they affect you in the same way, no matter where you are in the world. So
it doesn't matter what language you speak or which side of the globe you're on. Yeah, it all works the same way. It's not
you walk
good.
off that roof and you're going down. So so that's the bit there. So what does the next 12 months look like for the PWNA? What sort of things have they got rumbling on? They've just had the convention in Florida. What's the next 12 month of calendar looking like? What goals and ambitions as an organization does it have?
We are going to be at the IWCA convention in Las Vegas at the beginning of February. I don't know if we're going to the huge convention this year or not. That we haven't determined that yet. That's still kind of up in the air. We have our convention that'll be in Reno, Nevada in September coming up, and I think you're going to be there as well in Reno.
Yeah, that's on the calendar.
Yeah, we're doing more West Coast shows now. We didn't do any West Coast shows for the longest time. We had one last year in Phoenix, Arizona, and we had a really good turnout in Phoenix. The numbers were a lot higher than we expected. It was nice to have a lot of interactions with West Coast people, which is where I'm from, because a lot of the pressure washing and soft washing conventions are on the East Coast. Okay. So it's not very often they make it out the West, but we're going to be out the West again in Reno. That'll be good. And then I'm definitely going to the ISCA convention next year in Vegas. I'm excited about that. You guys had a really great convention for your first one. And I think we talked about that at the convention. I told you how good of a job you guys did.
Thank you.
And I'm sure I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys are doing in the future.
Yeah, too. We've got some ideas. We're floating some really interesting ideas around, and the door is open very obviously for you, but also for the PWNA. We'd like their engagement and presence at next year's show. We believe you guys as an organization have got something to add, something different. You can draw in a different crowd than we can draw in as well. So we had I spoke at your convention in the early November, and then within 2 weeks we had the ISCA convention, and somebody who heard me speak at your show came out to the convention for both days, and he said, I'm only here because I heard you at the PWNA convention and I felt I needed to know more. So that paid off. If one person comes and learns something, then it makes it all worthwhile. But we feel probably the PWNA, if we can collaborate, will bring a different crowd to the next year's ISCA convention. So we're looking forward to that. So there's exciting times, between all these industries and the progression into solar and how IWCA moving into it, PWNA moving into it, ISCA's already there, and how it's all going to come in a melting pot. I think it's really quite exciting. Mike, I think, is a pivotal figure in there as well that can play his part between three organizations. So he's a pivotal centre point figure as well in my mind. So it's going to be interesting to see what the next couple of years hold out. And we've got people like Kevin Hargis and Roger Barnhart and Manuel Mateo out in Puerto Rico as well. We're trying to get these guys into teaching full ISCA classes in their areas. There's also going to be a big focus in next year's ISCA convention to incorporate all the Spanish speakers. We're going to get some live translation get done there so that everybody can listen to it in Spanish, because there's such a massive Spanish contingency, or Spanish speaking rather contingency, cleaning solar in places like California and Nevada and Puerto Rico, that we think we need to engage these guys. And by getting the whole thing translated into Spanish live, we hope we'll bring that crowd in as well. So interesting times. So I'm going to finish on this, Trevor, which is a little bit off the wall. So I've got a set of cards here, which is from a podcaster, massive podcast here in the UK, Stephen Bartlett, who I've been privileged enough to see live. His podcast is called The Diary of a CEO. He has an interesting tradition that the guest writes a question for the following guest in a book, but they don't know who that following guest is going to be. And then the following guest comes in, and at the end of the show, they have to answer that question. So what they did is they made a card game from all these questions. So I'm just going to shuffle through the cards, and I literally, this is random. I don't know what you're going to be asked, but I thought it'd be quite a fun way to finish this conversation. So I'm going to start going through the cards. You tell me to stop, and I'm just going to turn it over and see what card we've got there to ask you.
Stop.
Okay. So here we go. So this is an interesting question. This is from Mel Robbins. If you had to give all your money away to one organization tomorrow morning, what organization would it be and why?
Like a nonprofit organization?
Any.
The Make-A-Wish Foundation.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
What makes that one stand out for you?
It's really just the thought of what those kids go through. Like their childhood is kind of taken from them. They're sick, early on, and their entire childhood is just trying to survive, which is something that we all take for granted. And I think that they kind of get the shaft bigger than anybody else. So if I wanted to try and do something financially to relieve anybody, I think they deserve it more than anybody that I can think of, at least sitting here thinking about it. I think that's where I'd want my money to make the biggest impact.
Excellent. Well, it's a great place to leave the conversation. I'm glad we've had it, Trevor. From what I know of you, you seem a good man, and your last answer there confirms that to me as well. So I'm looking forward to getting to know you better than I have in this conversation, to working with you and PWNA in years to come. I hope you find it an interesting discussion. I certainly have, listening to your tales and stories. So I've had a nice time. Thank you very much for coming along. Tell your friends, if there's anyone else that you know that you think, they'd be interested in doing this, then we'd be glad to host them here on ISCA TV. And I look forward to catching up with you in February at the IWCA convention.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a little over a month away. Can't wait.
Yeah, it won't be long, and I'll be getting on the plane again. I can't wait. All right, take care, Trevor. See you again.
All right, bye.
Thank you. Bye.